Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our panel from around the world. We have got today with us our chairman, of course, John Mill. We also have Richard Jessup, sales director of European and Middle East Africa from Gerber Technology, who has been supporting this event throughout the year. So we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Richard for being with us again today. We have Jonathan Edberg, Executive Vice President of Cobmex Apparel UK Limited. So welcome, Jonathan, and Jonathan is based in Canada. So thanks for joining us. Rob Sayles, Managing Director of Seahawk Apparel, and Steve Zalkin, President of the North American Association of Uniform Manufacturing and Distributors. So welcome to all of you. And we're going to start off today by just talking briefly about manufacturing and sourcing. Manufacturing and sourcing has come up quite a few times for us, and we felt it was important to bring together some expert to just talk to our audience and just pick up some of the challenges that you're all going to be facing with sourcing, and the Brexit is on our doorstep. So all this we're hoping to cover during the time. You will notice as well, you all know, if you've not used it before, you can put questions into the panel. We've got some in already today before we've even started, so it just shows the importance of this webinar. I'd like to also just take this opportunity to thank all of our participants who are online at the moment, and I hope you find it useful. For those who don't know me, just to remind you, it's Yvette Ashby. My name is Yvette Ashby, and I'm the CEO for PCIW, and I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us this afternoon. So let me first introduce you to our chairman, John Mill, who will talk to you a little bit about the PCIW and what this webinar entails. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the PCIW, I'd like to add my welcome to you all to our very first webinar week, which we hope will be the first of many to come. This week, we're engaging with industry after a difficult year in order to get the focus back on track and to pick up from where we left off in dealing with the challenges the industry faces. Today's topic is manufacturing and sourcing. In a global world where businesses need to compete on an international scale, do manufacturers and suppliers have the resilience to cope in a disrupted market? To discuss this, I also add my welcome to Jonathan Edberg of Cobmex, Richard Jessup of Gerber, Rob Sayles of Seahawk Apparel, and our good friend Steve Zalkin from our sister organization in the US, the North American Uniform and Manufacturing Distributors Association. We're also extremely grateful to Richard and Gerber for the support today in partnering with us on this important topic. So in welcoming our panelists today, I should on your behalf like to thank them for their knowledge, expertise, and indeed for giving us their time today, both to present and answer some of your questions on the very relevant topic of manufacturing and sourcing. We have seen supply chains falter and borders closed throughout the pandemic. And this has highlighted the difficulties in maintaining resilience when a globalized world has seen manufacturing and sourcing strategies outsourced. Today's panel offers diverse insights on best practices in manufacturing and sourcing, as some work locally and some offshore. So we'll hear what these industry leaders consider the most important factors and what contingencies are being put in place to benefit the processes and logistics of sustaining supply, demand, and competitive pricing, both now and in the future. We'll ensure that all questions will be answered, particularly those not covered today because of time constraints. We have had very informative webinars this week already on sustainability, PPE, a crisis or opportunity, and yesterday, UKCA marking of PPE. We very much hope you find the topics we have established to be of value to you, and we look forward to continuing a regular dialogue with all those in our industry in the new year. The professional clothing industry worldwide is the only sector-specific trade body devoted to the multifaceted professional clothing industry and help our members discover new opportunities for their businesses by putting buyers in touch with suppliers for workwear, corporate wear, and PPE. As a not-for-profit organisation, we place our members at the forefront of our work, and we are run by our members for the benefit of the members. We are thus a knowledge bank, a meeting place, a network, and a voice to government. We bring together organisations, experts, and individuals from across the industry to create a platform through which we provide business opportunities, professional guidance, and strategic support for those who are part of our thriving trade, helping our members grow their business and extend their reach. We also publish online the PCIW Voice magazine dedicated to the industry. We also celebrate the industry by organising the annual PCIW Awards event, and alongside this, run a summit of relevant topics for learning, debate, and discussion. Sadly, we were not able to hold it this year due to the pandemic, but are intending to hold it in next June 2021, when we very much hope it can be run in accordance with government guidelines in force at the time. Please look for updates at our website, which can be found at www.pciaw.org. And again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. If you have any feedback, we'd be delighted to hear from you, either directly to Yvette and the team or through info@pciw.org. Back to you, Yvette.
Thank you, John. Our next panelist and speaker will be Richard Jessup, Sales Director of Gerber Technology. Thank you, Richard. Your mic is on.
Thank you, Yvette. I thought I was going to join after Jonathan, but that's okay. We'll go straight in. Maybe Jonathan can come after me. But okay, so I think I've taken part in a number of these webinars now. So you know, this one has a slightly different flavour than some of the other ones. But I just want to maybe reaffirm some of the stuff that that we did at the start of the pandemic. And then maybe just discuss what that's meant for the manufacturers that we've been working with. So when the back in the early days of the pandemic, so January, February time, we saw it coming fairly soon because of our operations in China. So we wanted to prepare the industry as the best we could, and what we set about doing was putting together a task force that was able to support the industry and to enable our customers and partners in the industry to have access to a set of resources, and the set of resources really were provided free of charge, without you know, any kind of need from ourselves. And the idea was to share, because the most important thing at that time was to try and fight the pandemic as best we possibly could as an industry. We found that quite a number of companies were able to access the information, and it could have been patterns, or it could have been you know, where to source material from, and a whole host of other information. We tried to connect companies together to really try and connect the supply and the demand, and we did this on a global basis, you know, all the way around the world. What did we find from our customer base? Well, actually, do you know what? The industry really came together, and the professional clothing industry were a real part of this, because those were the guys that set up sometimes brand new manufacturing facilities for making PPE to try and combat the shortage. And in many cases, what we found is that the facilities that have been set up continue to make PPE. And actually, it's allowed some of these companies to streamline their processes. So by investing in technology, it's made companies stronger in a very, very difficult time. You know, how have these companies been able to do it? Well, it's come from a a commitment from themselves, but also in many cases investment from their local government. Some countries have been better than others at that. You know, where there has been government support, it's really allowed companies to take hand of the investment and make it really work for them, so that they could really help in the pandemic, but also think about the future. You know, what does the future hold, and how does that investment help them for the future? So what we're actually seeing is that some nearshoring is going on. So a lot of these companies that we're sourcing from, often China, the Far East, are now looking to manufacture locally for local supply. And it's been almost an epiphany for them, you know, to do something that brings business back to the local community. And that's been really important in a very difficult time, because we know that you know, many people have lost jobs, and so for some of these companies that have been able to expand in a troublesome time, it's really helped the community grow. Do we see it continuing? Well, we hope so. You know, we hope that that by investing in technology, it's taught companies that actually they can compete. You know, they can compete with some of the often crazy pricing that we see from the Far East, and be able to manufacture in a way that that gives them that competitive advantage. The other thing that we've seen is now you know, a change really in the demand of the health services, so that rather than a lot of single-use garments, there have been a change towards multiple-use garments, and that's not necessarily been driven by the health services, but has been driven by the suppliers and the manufacturers to say, look, okay, let's try something different. And with the multiple-use garments, it no longer comes down to what the individual, you know, what the cost per piece is. It comes down to what the overall cost for the use of that garment is, and often that is cheaper than the single-use garments. So I think, you know, that there's been some big changes. The changes will continue to happen. I think actually I'm really proud of how resilient the garment industry has been in a very, very difficult time. Sure, you know, we're not out of it yet. It's going to continue to be tough, but by a combination of quick thinking and in many cases government investment, our customers and the manufacturers out there in the industry have been able to survive in a very, very difficult time, and that by doing so, that's really set them up for success in the future. So I think with that, I'll wrap up for now. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions and debate later on. So I'll hand over to my fellow colleagues on the panel, and maybe we can take some questions later.
Absolutely, Richard. Thanks very much for that. Yes, I put you before Jonathan because you are a sponsor. Richard, okay. I just wanted to ask you one question. I've had several inquiries, but one in particular. You know, a government body has contacted me today regarding Tunisia to say there's a huge opening. Have you, over the last sort of 6 months we've been doing this, seen the changes in manufacturing? Have you seen any changes in Asia or China in terms of the manufacturing and people sourcing at all?
I think we've seen a lot more nearshoring. A lot more companies are sourcing closer to home. I think a lot of that came out of panic in the early days, but I think what's now being recognised is that there are some good quality manufacturers that are much closer to home, and it's better to support local industry than it is necessarily to go after the price per piece. I think what in some cases governments are beginning to realise that the overall impact on the economy by nearshoring is much better than going after the single lowest price. Time will tell. Time will tell whether that continues, because there's a bit of a mindset change. but certainly we've seen a lot more garments being manufactured closer to home.
Excellent. We'll pick up on this later on. Jonathan, thank you very much, and I'm sorry about that. But we'd love to welcome Jonathan Edberg, Executive Vice President from Cobmex Apparel, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say, because he literally travels the globe in sourcing and meeting various different manufacturers and suppliers. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Yvette. I think there's a couple of topics to discuss this morning. Obviously, with respect to our business, how COVID has impacted our business with respect to our own manufacturing and sourcing. I believe that, initially when the pandemic started, it initially started in China. We saw, Chinese New Year was extended for about a month, and then China began to open. Now, when China began to open, the rest of the world started to lock down. So we have factories and mills globally in Mexico, China, and Cambodia. So as China began opening, for example, our factories in Mexico were shut down for about 2.5 months. Our factory in Cambodia remained open the entire time with strict COVID restrictions in place. We also do some manufacturing in the US, where our factory remained open, but at the same time, they pivoted to manufacture gowns for the US government. With respect to our actual distribution offices, which we have in Toronto, New York, and in Epping, our warehouses remained open to ship our stock range garments, as we were deemed an essential service, because we supply knitwear for many government agencies, as well as a lot of law enforcement agencies, emergency services, etc. So with respect to our manufacturing and sourcing operations, while we were impacted, we were impacted with certain closures. But because of our diverse manufacturing, during certain lockdowns, other factories that we operate were open. One of the questions, Yvette, that you had asked with respect to if we experienced any difficulties in sourcing raw materials throughout the pandemic, I think the entire world faced challenges of sourcing raw materials. Unless obviously a mill was deemed an essential service where they pivoted to manufacture certain materials for PPE, a lot of mills faced the same closures as factories did globally. So we specialize in the manufacture of knitwear, and our main raw material is obviously the yarn. So for us, the difficulty, again, that we encountered through the pandemic was delays in yarn deliveries from our mills. Now, for Cobmex as a company, it's very difficult for us to just flick the switch and move to another mill that perhaps other companies can do. We have very specialized yarns that we use for our manufacturing. We have mills in China and Mexico, as well as the US, that we nominate all of our factories to purchase from. So for example, in China, we have several mills that we work with for many years. We've developed our high performance yarns there. In Mexico, we have our own proprietary yarns, which are Durapil and Durapil Ultra. So as a company, we do extensive research and development when developing new yarns or mills based on the stringent requirements we have on performance and quality. We would not be able to change suppliers, as our requirements are on pilling. All of our mills must be Oecotec certified, which, as most of you know, is one of the highest chemical compliances in the world. We also have specific requirements on how our yarn is spun at our mills. So while, like I say, most companies globally had challenges, regardless of it was yarn or fabric or any type of raw material they manufacture, I think the key point here is that most companies, regardless of whether they manufacture in the Far East or manufacture domestically, I do believe most companies faced challenges throughout the pandemic.
Do you now see then, Jonathan, have you seen any changes as the countries open up in terms of the manufacturing and the sourcing? Have you seen some changes yet, or it's still as rigid?
Well, I think, there's two sides to this. So with respect to PPE, I think there have been some changes. Now, I mean, not only in the UK, but in many countries, it's been talked about for years about manufacturing, bringing manufacturing back and manufacturing domestically. I think obviously, unfortunately, COVID happened, and not only the UK, but most countries were facing a shortage of PPE. And that's where a lot of domestic factories were able to pivot and start manufacturing this for the government. So I think moving forward, yes, those types of products will probably remain, manufactured locally. But I think from an overall perspective globally, when you're talking about the corporate wear business or the public safety business, which we call, uniforms for police or emergency services that are not PPE, I think it's very difficult to believe that those programs would be brought back to be manufactured domestically. I think, cost is a big thing. I know there's a lot of proponents, there's a lot of people who are very keen on manufacturing domestically. But at the end of the day, once they see the cost and once the actual end user sees the cost, then they decide against it. I think it's a mindset that if people actually want to manufacture domestically or bring manufacturing back to a closer region, I think there's a mindset in the whole industry that has to change.
I am still fighting that, because I do believe that the UK in particular should have some manufacturing base here of some sort, because we don't want to get back into the situation. But we will discuss that as we go on further, Jonathan. We'll come back to you on that. Thank you very much. Our next panelist that's joining us now is Rob Sayles, Managing Director of Seahawk Apparel. Rob.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to have been invited by the PCIAW to take part this afternoon. So thank you for inviting me, Yvette. I think from my perspective, listening to the previous couple of panelists, I think I really wish Richard Jessup would be in the NHS procurement department, because what he was saying was really music to my ears. From the perspective of UK manufacturing and nearshoring, Seahawk Apparel have experienced quite a lot of new inquiries and really promising signs that people are starting to change their minds about where to source. But it's been difficult to break into some of the bigger organisations such as the NHS. But I think time will tell that all we can do is keep putting our best foot forward as an industry in the UK. And as we do that, hope that we can retain the skills that we've got some fantastic people in the UK and a fantastic heritage of the textile industry, which is, we really cannot afford to lose. So I think I've really been posed a few questions for this webinar this afternoon, and one of those to start with was the benefits of producing products locally, and what benefit does that bring to the local manufacturing and local community. So I mean, from our point of view, we're a family business rooted in Scotland. Now manufacturing base is obviously in the UK, and that obviously helps stimulate our local economy. Certainly within Scotland, within the Fife area that we work from. We employ nearly 30 people, and so we're creating and retaining jobs within that local area. But we're also using local and UK supply chain, so that we are really procuring the majority of our products and bill of materials, if you like, from the UK. So on that basis, we're supporting the UK supply chain. Obviously, we're reducing transport, and obviously that has a positive effect on the environment. I think also for us, we've been able to engage with some smaller companies, that's smaller than Seahawk, but have similar skills. We've been able to liaise with them to deliver products for to support the COVID effort within the UK. So that's also been real standout for me in the way that we've managed to put together. And again, echoing what Richard had said from his earlier comments. So I guess also from a quality control perspective, we're managing all those processes locally. They're not offshore. We're closer to it, and we can manage that all the way through the supply chain, as well as through our own production from our own factory. So I mean, in my view, I'd recommend UK manufacturing to other businesses, and there's we have seen an appetite move towards made in the UK products, which is very promising. But there has to be a lot more in the future. So we're hoping that buyers will look to nearshore, as Richard had said, and that will hopefully help keep the textile industry alive and keep those skills within the UK. My own personal view is that every pound certainly of public money that's spent in the UK goes to help retain jobs, build skills, and helps communities within the UK. So I think for me that's a very important thing that underpins society in my view in the UK.
Rob, speaking from, I want to pick up on what Jonathan said earlier about the pricing. I think I wanted the group of panelists that's joined us today, I wanted to give perspective from all over the world because of their expertise. I wanted people to listen and understand that although we are working all over the world, there are still opportunities for everybody to work closer together and make the garments closer to home. And I know the pricing thing always comes up. So from that point of view, could you explain how is it a company such as yourself, been established for many generations, is now still making the garment and making a profit for you to survive? If you just explain how do you do that, because I'm of the belief that you've got to take about the transportation costs. We're all talking about sustainability and the environment, and the 2050, and we're the biggest polluter. All this we've talked about this year. The textile industry is the biggest polluter. So from that perspective, how do you manage as a manufacturer?
Well, I think certainly more recently we tried to make it easy for people to do business with us. Companies don't want to spend huge amounts on garments where there may be waste, bringing them from overseas, where they have large MOQs. we're really flexible in how we've worked with that. So we try to wrap our arms around the customer and give them a package. So we may not be cheapest on all the garments that we make, but overall we offer fantastic value. We visit the customer, they can come to the factory because they're in the UK, they can get involved in the process. We've had companies coming and making videos of their garments being made, which adds value back within their own organisation, and the whole experience, I guess, is one that's they're much more involved in. So I think for us, we do charge them slightly more than they probably can get from overseas, but generally speaking, the flexibility that we offer, it's given us a competitive edge. So I guess that would be really the crux of it, Yvette.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We'll come back to you with some questions later on. Steve, welcome. And to you, welcome and happy Thanksgiving. Steve Zalkin, President of the North American Association of Uniform and Manufacturing Distributor. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Yvette, and good afternoon to all of our friends on the other side of the pond, and good morning to all the North American stakeholders on the call this morning. It's my honor to be a presenter, and I've got a few slides I'd like to share with you, so give me one moment here to share my screen. There we go. I'd like to just really kind of start off with I'm providing a perspective from a lot of our members in North America. And the first screen that I'd like to let you take a look at, if I may. There we go. This particular screen, I'd like to give you a perspective of the imports that are year to date. This is as of September 2020, and it's information provided by the United States Census Bureau, and it's the top 15 countries that the United States imports from. And the data is in billions of dollars. And up above, I kind of gave you some information that as of the 25th, a couple of days ago, 1 pound equaled 1.33 US dollars, and 1 euro equaled 1.19 US dollars. And there's really no surprise whatsoever of who our top 3 countries are that the United States imports from. That being China, Mexico, and Canada. And as you look down the list, you're going to see Ireland is number 9, and the UK sits at number 11. And that all of these top 15 countries make up 79.2% of the imports into this country. And so this kind of gives you a representation of the manufacturing of our uniform industry and the apparel industry, where they're bringing product in to the country from. And you're going to see sitting at number 7 is Vietnam. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But Vietnam is doing 5.6, almost $5.7 billion this year of exports to the United States, making up 3.6%, or I'm sorry, 3.4%. And that is a significant increase from the past. Now, I was asked to answer three specific questions. And the first one was, as the president of NAUMD, what can you tell us about North America businesses and the unique challenges or benefits they face in their manufacturing and sources strategies? The United States manufacturing has had a significant challenge, in my opinion. And truthfully, just look at the actions from the past 4 years under the Trump administration. Donald Trump ran on the MAGNA belief, which was Make America Great Again. But over his 4 years as president of the country, they have enacted significant tariffs on China. Apparel is at a 25% tariff coming into this country now. They took down our old NAFTA program, which was the North America Free Trade Agreement. That was an agreement that started back in 1994, and they wanted to recraft what's now known as the USMCA, which is the United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement. The president had also had significant immigration policy, which created a lot of labor shortages for this country. And of course, as several of you have talked, COVID-19 is a significant challenge. And one thing about business just does not like uncertainty. And with the nationalism that the Trump administration has brought to the country, a lot of our manufacturers just had that uncertainty that was built in, or was now being subjected into their business policy. The challenges of a lot of product being made in China and the tariffs going on, who is going to pay for the tariffs? I mean, obviously, it's my opinion, ultimately, the end user pays for the tariffs, but the manufacturers pay for them when they are importing the product. So one of those challenges by our manufacturers has been looking for other areas to produce. So we've seen a shift of production going to Vietnam, into India, Malaysia, Sri Lanka. And that's where you'll see that Vietnam grew up to the 7th position on that previous chart. Back in 2009, I looked up this morning, back in 2009, Vietnam had virtually zero, or I'll say insignificant, exports of apparel into the United States. And now they're up to almost $6 billion as of last year. One of the other challenges that the Trump administration provided to our manufacturers has been, he withdrew from the TTP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I listed the 12 countries that this partnership was with. And you're going to see there, you've got Vietnam and Malaysia, which is in the top 15 exporters to this country. We're part of that partnership that we withdrew from. Again, this creates cost issues for our manufacturers to take a look at. The second part of the question was do you think the election of Joe Biden will change anything? And my answer to that is, to look at incoming President-elect Joe Biden's administration and what they're going to be doing, look to the past. Look to what the President Obama administration did. And look at the current nominees and appointees of the potential of the Biden cabinet and administration. Recently, he appointed Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and to the UN Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield. Both of those people are globalist. They're about formulating partnerships with allies and working across the globe for the benefit of humanity. The second question, wrong way. The second question that I was asked to kind of talk about was, as restrictions have closed borders and made the logistics of globalization more difficult, what advice would I give to businesses to ensure continuity in manufacturing and sourcing processes? And I look at that and I basically say, you need to visualize your supply chain from start to finish, and visualize that supply chain as a pipeline, starting at point A, and you need to get everything through to point B, which is going to be the end user who is purchasing your products and services. You can also look at this as coming onto the freeway. You're merging onto the freeway. You just turned off at the local street. You're on the entry ramp and you're trying to gain speed to merge onto the freeway and flow with the traffic. You've got to look at these pipelines and look for any possible bottleneck that possibly would be there. And you've got to look at everything from start to finish to get you from point A to point B. You need to look at your raw materials. You need to look at the production themselves, the freight. Will you be producing in a company that, or in a country that does have tariffs? How do you price that in? Or is there options of working in countries that are duty-free? What are the country of origin labor laws? The labor laws in Europe, the labor laws in the United States are significantly different than the labor laws in Africa and Sri Lanka. You have to be cognizant of all that. You have to understand that if an individual is making substandard wages compared to the country that we currently live in, that might be a very livable wage in the country that they currently are at. You need to look at your order timelines. You need to look at your inventory. Will those manufacturers in the countries that you're doing business, will they build and hold inventory for you and ship just on your orders themselves? What are your lead times? Your purchasing forecasts. I've talked with different manufacturers that they have increased their working relationship with their suppliers, these factories overseas, by truly giving them annual forecasts. So if you can sit down and produce a forecast for your supplier and say that we anticipate purchasing X amount over the next 12 months, that's going to build that relationship with that supplier for your company. One of the other things that you absolutely should have and look at, and if it's a bottleneck, it can cause troubles, have boots on the ground. whether that is a company individual, such as a Jonathan, who I know travels and goes to the different factories, or work with an established sourcing company. Know what that sourcing company's strong points are, who their relationships are with different factories, because in our world, there are countries of origin and factories that specialize in knits and some that are better in wovens, and that's where you should be planning to do some of your business. Only work with reputable factories. And again, that goes back to understanding the labor laws of the country that you're working with. Something that I find very significant as well, always have a plan B. And plan B isn't just because of tariffs or COVID. It could be something, a factory it could have a fire. There could be a natural disaster. There could be strikes. Always have in your mind a plan B, whether that happens to be a different factory in the same country, it happens to be a different country to produce in. And I make this sound like it's easy to have these backup programs, but it's not. But you really need to have a contingency for your production, for your freight. You get hit with a very large order and your inventory is well below your reorder points because of that significant order. Do you have a relationship with a freight forwarder that may assist you in flying new product over at an expense versus bringing it over by other forms of transportation? But do you have that relationship with that freight forwarder to assist you? So my point is globalization is a very difficult thing, but you need to really visualize your entire supply chain. And it could be an annual or every 2-year event to sit down with your team members and go from point A to point B. And my final point on globalization, and it's a new feature that we're using today to subsidize in-person meetings and events, is use these video meetings as your best friend. You can contact overseas at any given moment to have a chat, or they can even walk around a factory floor for you to show you what's going on with your production line. Then let's see here, I had one other question posed to me, and that was, what factors do you think are the most important to the business associated with NAUMD when finding the right manufacturing processes and sourcing channels? And I found this to be really the most universal question and the easiest question to answer, because I believe this pertains to all aspects of business. It partakes to all aspects of manufacturing, no matter what industry you're in. And that is the reliability and accountability of the people you're doing business with, the communications. You have to have really good communications with all of your suppliers and the people that you're doing business with. What are the services? Are they providing you the services that you need, you want, you have to have? And relationship. I talk as our association, and Yvette, I'm sure you do too, with the PCIAW, relationships. It's about networking. It's about having conversations with each other for the benefit of everybody involved. And I thank you for your time.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. I mean, um, we were asked to uh, invite you along by various different buyers from our network, Uniform Buyers Network, and I want to thank you for the effort that you've put in, because I'll be able to relay that back to our buyers.
You're most welcome.
So it's been a really interesting presentation, and I'm sure everybody else. But one of the questions I wanted to put to you is with the with you mentioned about all the tariffs, etc., and with Brexit, how that is going to um, really change the the groundwork, and how people look at us now. So how, do you think that will have some sort of effect as well, or do you think it's all built in already? Because I just see this as a massive problem.
It is a issue that needs to be looked at and discussed. For our manufacturers that I've talked with, it's 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 about, again, your communications with the manufacturing facilities, and the clout that you have with those facilities. We have seen where you negotiate a little bit the tariffs. The manufacturer takes a portion of it. The um, importer takes a portion of it, and then the customer, the distributor takes a portion of it. It goes down the entire food chain. Those costs are costs. I mean, plain and simple, they have to be built in. They have to be paid by somebody. So as Brexit becomes a more and more a reality, you need to isolate those and start having those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of companies, you just can't absorb a 25% hit to your margin.
Mm-hmm.
The end user will shop around. They're not going to want to pay an additional 25% markup on the products that they're purchasing. So I think um, a shared cost of the tariffs is what I'm seeing happening the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Excellent. I don't believe for 1 minute that manufacturing here in the UK is a complete reality. What I'm trying to get the government to do is to have a portion of whatever we're doing manufactured here, and the rest of it has to be manufactured overseas. That is clear. We've looked through that many times, and many different ways. We're fully aware of that. But what we're trying to say is that um, it's important that we do not get caught out short again, and there are manufacturers here in the UK that can pick up the slack. Manufacturers that are actually qualified, not producing retail, but producing proper PP, proper workwear, proper medical gown that conform to our very strict regulation. These are the things that I'm trying to get across to everyone. So, Declan, we've got some questions. Steve, thanks again. Declan, your mic is off.
Here we go. So yeah, we've got a few questions here. So what level of confidence manufacturers have in the traditional market, and how many expect to be around in 12 months, and how are they planning for the future? So I guess this would probably be best for the likes of Steve and Richard, for having quite a global network and understanding different pain points that the businesses they're talking to are facing. So how confident are they?
Well, if I can, the confidence, again, has to go back to planning. Here in the United States, I'm cognizant of 3 manufacturing plants out of the uniform industry that has closed down in the last year. And all 3 of those plants, the owners told me it was simply because of a labor issue, not being able to find machine operators in the United States to operate the equipment at a wage that they can pay, and just the sheer numbers of people that we need. Again, that kind of falls back on some of the labor policies that the Trump administration had put into place. I foresee that over the next few years to change, and the United States borders opening up a little bit more. But the confidence, and we're no different than what I'm hearing over the last few days on these webinars. We're no different than what's happening in the UK. We want to establish and build a domestic manufacturing base. But again, you have to have the labor to operate the machines. In our postal industry right now, it's a little complex because all of that product must be, by law, what's called the Berry Amendment, be produced domestically. And I call it from dirt to the end product. So if the product has cotton in it, the cotton has to be grown in the United States. And it's very problematic right now, especially with COVID. A lot of the domestic plants were shut down for several months. They're all playing catch up. The confidence level is building momentum, but it's going to take a lot of effort to reestablish a domestic manufacturing base in this country.
Okay. And thank you. And what about you, Richard? What's your experience in the kind of confidence that, because obviously you spoke earlier about people pivoting and adapting into different avenues of production of the likes of PPE, but what's your overall feeling on the subject?
I think it's really interesting because, you know, as I said before, people did pivot straight into making PPE wherever they could. But the challenge was that actually they had to find the route to the source themselves many times. So they had to connect with the different health organisations and make sure that that they were connected with where the garments were being used. You know, what happens from now? Well, the challenge that we have is that unfortunately the UK government has decided to go for a slightly different sourcing strategy, which means that they're going back to overseas sourcing. And some of these companies have been left a little bit high and dry. That said, I can also say that there have been many success stories throughout this really difficult time as well, where companies have realised that actually they can be really agile and maybe change their strategy slightly in order to make different products. And where those companies have invested in technology to do so, which is where we come in, then it's made them more efficient and has really set them in a different place than where they were at the very beginning of the pandemic. So, you know, that's kind of a key message. You know, when times are tough, if you can, you know, invest in making your business smarter, faster, more efficient in order to be ready for the future. And there have been some great examples of that. I'm not saying that's happening everywhere, but certainly, you know, there have been some real good success stories, not just in the UK, but across the whole of Europe have experienced this. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. You know, some companies have really adapted and some haven't. You know, we'll see what happens in the coming months, but you know, it has been nice to see the real success stories coming on stream.
If I can just add a point there, Yvette, I think it's interesting to think about where UK manufacturing sits in the pantheon, really. I mean, it wasn't until, if memory serves me correct, that a consultancy company called Bain went into or were hired by Marks and Spencers back in the late or the mid 80s, and they were charged with trying to find a way to improve the M&S gross margin throughout their apparel, and they looked at the opportunities in China, or at least the Orient, to be able to do that. And of course, they found out that they could do it. The end result was that M&S, who'd been, and Debenhams and House of Fraser and a lot of the other store groups here in the UK had been very significant supporters of UK manufacturing and had very little experience of actually going overseas. So that the issue is that the sheer volume of outsourcing going to the Orient meant that factories just closed here hand over fist during that period of time. So it's true to say that apart from some of the heritage manufacturing that still exists, so Scottish cashmere, Yorkshire worsted woolens, and footwear and apparel in Northampton, if you like, just to mention a few, still exist. There's no real manufacturing capacity at volume and at scale. As Richard mentioned, the recent decision by, so far as we're aware, and I know that you and I, we're trying to find out exactly what it is, a bland statement, but we don't know what it means, is that the government have decided yet again to effectively stop individual NHS trusts doing their own business, which resulted in a very significant upturn and upgrowth in manufacturing, where companies did pivot to be able to help and support in the time of need, and that they've moved it back. Centralized purchasing has once again been affected, and it would suggest that the significant volume of goods to be actually purchased by the NHS and others will be Far East related, and the issue is what happens now, and this gives rise to just mentioning the fact that the PCIA is just finalising a report which actually looks at the pandemic, which is not really relating to the National Audit Office reports which have come out most recently, but is actually an industry sector view of the issues that we faced and what actually should be happening in the future. And that we would yet again be calling for anywhere between 15 to 20% of all production required by people like the NHS. I mean, like in the same way that they're doing the US. So I don't think we'll ever get anything enshrined in law like the American Postal Service has got. But I do believe that, for the emergency services, for the military, I mean, we should be looking at the sourcing plans for those as well, and making sure that elements of that that the UK companies could get involved in. There's quite a lot of UK companies involved, of course, but very few of them are actually manufacturing stuff in the UK. The UK companies are actually as middlemen or agents, and they're producing things offshore. And the key issue, if they do that, then my personal belief is that the government of the day will win hands down, because they put people back into work. The people get wages, they pay their taxes. So what you get is a virtuous circle in the whole process. And the government has to learn that they can't buy the same like-for-like product between the Far East and the UK at the same price point, because it just doesn't work that way. In addition to which, carbon offsets and travel times and freight and logistics, if you're doing things much closer to home, then you can generate much better speed to market. You're doing it in a cleaner, more energy efficient way, and the fact that you can manage your business a lot better by actually forecasting, predicting demand much closer to the market, being able to work with and flexing production in each of the factories. So it's the whole issue that we're trying to get our head around is to be able to make a whole series of very purposeful recommendations to government about how we think they could and should react in the future.
Can I add some points here, if you don't mind? So
Jonathan, yeah,
just from a global perspective, okay, so as you know, we obviously manufacture globally, and we sell into, you know, Europe, the UK, North America, many different countries. So what Steve said about, you know, the postal service. So we are actually, Cobmex is one of 2 certified suppliers in the entire United States to manufacture postal sweaters for distributors. We've recently moved that manufacturing to the US because, as Steve mentioned, it has to be Berry compliant. Now, Berry compliant means every single component of that garment needs to be made in the US. However, there are certain yarn, there are certain fibers, certain trims, certain accessories, where in fact there are no US made manufacturers. So for example, the fiber that we use for our acrylic yarn, there is not one single manufacturer of that fiber in the United States. So we of course have to get a waiver from the US government to be able to bring that fiber into the US in order to manufacture our yarn. There are 2 zipper suppliers in the United States who manufacture aluminum zippers. Now, if they have orders from other customers, whether it's the US military or, you know, other government agencies, your orders get pushed to the end. So yes, while I agree that obviously bringing back manufacturing, whether it's in the UK or the US or Canada, it is something that is positive, it's not possible to bring everything back. So when you talk about, John, you know, the UK military, for example, so there are contracts in Canada and the US for the military that require those to be 100% made in Canada or made in the US. Right. There are also contracts for federal agencies that require, for example, 25% of the total contract, doesn't matter what product, as long as 25% of that contract, certain products are manufactured domestically. The balance can be manufactured offshore.
Yeah. Right.
I believe it's also the same case for many European countries.
It is.
But, you know, but when I think about supply and demand, you know, based and talking about our industry as a whole, again, not just PPE, I'm talking about head to toe garments for our industry. It would be impossible to bring that manufacturing back home.
I completely agree with you, Jonathan. There's no question about it. I took time to look at this earlier in the year, and I spoke to a lot of people along the way. There's no question about that. But what I'm trying to say is some of the things that could be made, we should be able to and the manufacturers here should be given that opportunity to do that.
100%.
In order to make the business that are manufacturing here viable. That's the.
And then just one more point back to John. John, when you were talking about, you know, compliance from a social or environmental perspective, you know, I'm sure I speak for whoever else is on this webinar that has, you know, done global sourcing or manufacturing. There's many times when you actually visit a factory domestically, again, whether it's in the UK or in the US or in Canada, that actually when you talk about environmental or social ethical compliance, their standards are actually not even remotely close to as high as some of the factories overseas.
I agree with that, Jonathan. That happens to be true.
Yeah, so, you know, like, for example, speaking for Cobmex, you know, we deal with clients globally, and each country has different compliance requirements from an environmental or ethical standpoint. So, you know, for example, McDonald's, you know, they have their own ethical compliance standards. You know, SEDEX, SMETA, you know, they have their own compliance standards. So speaking from Cobmex, our factories have to encompass all of those standards.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's all true, Jonathan. It's a good point.
Declan, have we got some more questions? Your mic is off.
Right. So this one I think would be quite interesting for Rob from Seahawk Apparel, based on something he mentioned when he was teaming up with other businesses in the local area to help deliver contracts. And this question here is asking the panel if they think manufacturers will consider consolidating in the future to survive, but maybe not necessarily for survival, but even just partnering up. Do you think they'll start to consolidate and work as a team? Rob?
Oh, we've already done that actually, on a couple of occasions. We've done it on a more local basis, where we work with 3 or 4 smaller companies to us to produce 100,000 face masks for the local universities in Scotland. So we work with 3 or 4 companies locally to do that. We were also part of a larger initiative, which was to deliver tens of thousands of hospital scrubs through the start of the COVID situation, where there was 7 UK factories that were brought together and all contributed significantly to manufacturing as I said, tens of thousands of hospital scrubs. So I think, from my perspective, it's certainly in my thought process, and it assists us in terms of our sustainability, in that the workload is not the work streams that we have are not always that far planned, that far ahead. So if we do get something that comes across our desk that we need to scale up quickly, we've been able to do that by cooperating with other small companies to deliver a larger scale project. So it's absolutely doable, and it's something that we're going to continue to facilitate and engage with and encourage. So yeah.
And was that did you ever do that before the pandemic, or is that something that this has brought on?
Well, actually, we hadn't done it before the pandemic, but I was in negotiation with a local company, which was like a Remploy company near to us in central Scotland. That went off the table when COVID came and they had to shut. But I'm hoping to pick that up again, but not really. No, is the answer to that in short.
Fair enough. And you think it will bring some greater benefits in terms of being awarded contracts in the future, having that extra resilience and flexibility that I guess we've been talking about before, but this is kind of a unique way of achieving that, isn't it?
Absolutely. It definitely is. And, the 3 or 4 companies that we used and that we worked with on a smaller scale project, we're in now contact on a weekly basis, and we're sharing ideas, we're sharing the workload, so that we can we keep the costs to a minimum in our own businesses at that point. So it's certainly something that we're going to keep going. And I know that from the larger scale project that we worked on, again, we're still in contact with the people involved in that, and we're trying to get the government to listen in terms of using UK manufacturing, supporting UK suppliers, even from the perspective of working together to deliver a larger scale project. So again, it's certainly possible, but people that have got the scale and the buying power to place that business, we hope we'll start to listen and see the benefits that can bring for not just now, but in the future, as we preserve the skills. Because the big danger here is that we don't support the UK textile industry and manufacturing industry. If they don't support it, there is no tomorrow. The ladies that we have, and the ladies and the people that you have in a lot of the factories around the UK, if you look at the average age of these people, we're at the last chance saloon. So we really need to invest in training for the future. and we need to keep the skills within the UK for the longer term, because I'm guessing that, you know, there will be other situations in the future, hopefully not as bad as this, but where there are situations in the future and we need the skills, you know, and to be able to flex and to be able to manufacture in shorter lead times in the UK or closer to home. If we don't have the skills, we won't be able to do that. So I think it's vitally important that we keep, you know, the work that the PCIW does in you know, in actually flag waving for us as an industry is fantastic, and that's why I'm more than happy to be here today and support giving something back to the PCIW. But absolutely, keep flying that flag for us.
Thank you.
Warren Young,
Can I just add something there, Declan, if I may?
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it's really interesting what Rob says, because we also saw that many companies in the whole of the textile industry, actually, not just clothing, not just professional clothing, but the whole of the industry came together. And we saw some companies, in the furniture industry making clothing for a traditional garment manufacturer. And why is that important? Well, what it allowed them to do is maybe the clothing manufacturer didn't have the right technology at the time, but it allowed them to use the furniture manufacturer maybe as a proof of concept to see how they could do it for the future. And so I think there's been this kind of cross multiplication across the whole of the textile industry to say, okay, what is the best way to do it? You know. And I think that's given this element of learning and a real opportunity to see the best way forward, and even into the automotive industry as well. You know, there's been some lessons learned from the automotive industry as well. So that's kind of the first thing. But the second thing is that I think Rob mentioned about the skills shortage. The other thing that we've seen is because companies have now worked together. Then they're beginning to think together as a consortium and say, okay, so how do we solve this problem of skills shortage? You know, and maybe if we get together as businesses, then we could set up a school or an apprentice college or something like that, as a group of businesses in either maybe in a region or something like that across the whole of the textile industry, in order to bring new people in and show people actually it can be a really interesting and exciting business to work in. So that's the other really great thing that we've seen coming out of it. It's allowed companies to talk more, and not just the individual businesses, but to be part of a wider community. I think
there is a question there, Richard, which will just come. They pose a question to me, and I know what I'm going to say, but I think it's important you can also answer this, and also our chairman John. The question is to me: what government education and initiatives are there for reskilling the workforce for the industry, e.g., not just for the skills of the needlepoint, but for CAD, patterning, and machinists, etc.?
Well, I don't know that there's so many government incentives actually, but we as a business have a commitment to at little or no cost to put our systems into schools, universities, colleges, in order to have the tools available for people to learn about the industry. But I think I go back to what I was saying. I think it's also the responsibility of the of our industry to find a way to train people, to find a way to bring people in and show them that it's a really exciting place to be. And maybe that is done more by working together. And I think by doing that, then perhaps, it shows the government that actually they need to pump more money into it and help us at it.
Absolutely. Hold on a second. Just to add my little bit, it's quite true. I mean, if we don't have the people to work in the factories, then we won't have any business at all. And if we don't watch out, the people who are currently in the factories will be old enough to retire, and we're not encouraging the younger people to come in. There's an extremely good initiative currently, it's run by Adam Mansell at UKFT, of which the PCIA is a partner, and they've got they are the sector skills and training body for the textile and apparel sector. And they are negotiate with the government to get money to help companies train employees for the various different tasks that are required in each of the factories. But to the best of my knowledge, unless, and there are some other companies in the UK who are big enough that they can actually derive their own training and development skills for their people. But generally speaking, for the young, the smaller units, the startups, and the people who maybe don't know how to train, there is an actual fact, usually KFT for sector skills and training, and they award grades for the level of skills and the level of attainment that the individuals get. So there is something at least around that's actually trying to tackle that.
I also wanted to extend that question to John and Steve to see if there's anything over in Canada and North America to see how they're comparing with us, because Steve mentioned labour shortages as well.
Steve, you mind if I go first, or you want to go first? Okay,
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
So I just have one point to add that from a previous question that we were discussing. You know, I don't want to sound like I'm not for, you know, manufacturing domestically, but I do think it's very, very important that if there is going to be a push for specific agencies or government agencies for manufacturing domestically, it's very important that those agencies stop awarding the lowest bid to the company who bids the lowest, right? So if all of these companies, if all of these agencies and all of these customers are doing these reverse auctions online where they look for the lowest cost, or, you know, they award the lowest total value bid, you know, it's going to be very difficult for companies who are manufacturing domestically to actually win that business. So sorry, Declan, from your question, you know, I think that's one of the biggest issues with bringing manufacturing closer to home. Is, I mean, you look at a country like China and, you know, their manufacturing, a lot of the younger generation is actually, they are also not getting into the trade of manufacturing. They're going into technology and different industries. So that's why you see a lot of companies actually right now exiting China and going to other places in Southeast Asia or Africa, where there's so many developing countries where they're taking their manufacturing to. So I do believe that, you know, yes, training programs and that kind of thing and apprenticeships will help, but at a certain point in time, I just don't think people are gonna, you know, wake up and aspire, you know, say, oh, you know, I want to become a sewing machine operator, you know, as an example. Okay, that's why, back to Richard, when you talk about technology, you've got, you know, from a knitwear company perspective, you have companies like Stoll or Shimasaki or companies like that who manufacture knitting machines that are now manufacturing 3D printing knitting machines, where they don't require machinists or knitters to be actually knitting the garment or linking the garment or sewing the garment. So I think that's where maybe the future of textile manufacturing is going.
I pretty much agree with what everybody has said. I don't think I can add much more to the conversation or to that question, but it's a very long-term problem. To bring manufacturing back to the United States, to bring it back to Canada, it's going to take incentives on behalf of the government to help reestablish the industries. You know, it's going to be a financial commitment by some of the large apparel companies, and you know, I'll throw out there like a VF Corporation, who's going to want to produce domestically for several reasons, and it won't. I agree, it won't happen overnight. It's going to take many years and a lot of financial incentives by the government to make anything happen, if at all.
Okay, thank you. Warren, I know you're online, and thank you very much for your questions. I will pick this up with Adam Mansell and get some more answers over to you, because you're also asking about the health and safety and manufacturing in the plant. So I can see your questions, and I will get back to you. I would appreciate it also you have my email address. If you can just drop me an email, and I can respond directly to you. Or maybe I will have it, Jeff will have it on the login that you sent to us. So I will definitely get back to you with those, the question you posed to me. Guys, thank you so much. That was really quite invigorating. I know that the companies that actually requested you guys to be online, especially you, Steve, they'll find that very, very interesting. Steve, is it all right if I share this information to the buyers that requested this specific information from you?
Absolutely. Why don't you allow me, though, to email you what I showed, I screen shared, because I made a couple little changes.
All right, then, excellent.
But I'll send that to you once we hang up.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you all very much for contributing today. I really do appreciate it. This week has been quite an eye-opening, learning so much myself. And the manufacturing, in terms of bringing it closer to home, will continue, I'm sure, as a talking topics for many months to come. Don't forget we're planning our event in June, and I hope all of you will want to take part in that, God willing, and the government let us do that. So thanks again, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend. Richard, as always, bless you. Thanks for your support.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
Yvette.
guys.
Be well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
See you guys.